The International Monetary Fund is warning that surging food and energy prices may lead to social unrest in Africa. A recent IMF report emphasizes the price of wheat, with 85% of the grain consumed in Africa being imported. Then experts say the price of wheat has increased between 20 and 40% just in the last 6 months. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has worsened matters recently. Now, South Africans are already stretched, with another increase in the fuel price likely tonight. We're still waiting to find out by how much will the price of fuel go up tonight in the country. Now, at what point could citizens take to the streets in protest? I mean, the IMF is warning that there could be more social unrest in sub-Saharan Africa due to all these increases. Now, Kingsley Makhubela, the director at Risk Recon, joining us now to discuss this. Dr. Makhubela, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. Just overall, how likely is it that the IMF warnings could become a reality?
Good afternoon, Brad Dan, and thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you. It's always a pleasure to share views with you. If you look around the sub-Saharan Africa, and the challenge around food security is quite huge. I mean, in East Africa, the expectation is that 13 million people are facing starvation. In this country, we're starting to see challenges around the water supply. Now, the water supply challenge, it trickles down to agricultural product. We've seen the shortage around the world of formula milk. The U.S. had to import large amount of formula milk. So we are likely to see social unrest that in the last week, we've seen challenges in Sri Lanka, actually, where the popular uprising, people are starting to really go after politicians, blaming politicians.
So this is a global phenomenon. So
it's a global phenomenon.
Because the cost of living is becoming a global crisis.
It's becoming a global crisis indeed, Braden, particularly the basic staple food. I mean, the expectation of the increase in this country. Tiger Brands, it's projecting between 15 and 20% of increase of staple food basket. In that basket, you find bread, you find maize meal, the basic consumable that people need, and particularly poor people need on a daily basis. So we are likely to see a lot of challenges.
You know, talking about the basics, after 3 o'clock, Dr. Makhubela, I'm going to be speaking to Mervyn Abrahams from the Peter Marisbeck Economic Justice and Dignity. They've just released today key data from the May 2022 Household Affordability Index.
Yeah.
Year on year, that just basic average food basket has gone up just year on year by 11%.
Absolutely. It's a huge challenge. Here in South Africa, we are totally facing a different challenge with respect to access to food. We have abundance of food, but we don't have people with capital who can procure this food, as opposed to what you are seeing in other parts of the continent. And the expectation is that the food consumer index now, it stands at 60%, 6% of inflation. And the expectation is that after today's fuel increase, we are likely to see more because it trickles down to transportations and so on. But then I went to last week to Nampo in Free State, and that is the harvest of farmers. It's a show run by farmers. If you look at the challenges, if you listen to challenges, what the farmers are saying, what they're likely to really challenge they are facing, it's around a question of alternating their plantation of staple food. If they were to do that, what is called, it's a normal process to rotate that, because then the soil gets challenges. But you need a lot of fertilizers to ensure that alternate plantation goes on smoothly. And they are saying they're likely to face serious challenges.
Now, if you look at the numbers today of unemployment figures for Q1 2022, so you are aware that we released a short while ago, while the quarterly jobless rate has declined slightly, I mean, the number of people in South Africa still unemployed is just under 8 million, 7.9 million. Of that number, you have 3.8 million young South Africans, you know, of the cohort of 10.2 million young South Africans aged between 15 and 24. 3.8 not in education, not in employment, not in training. It feels like it seems like it's just a disaster or of an upheaval just waiting to explode.
It's a time bomb. A lot of people have said the youth unemployment is a time bomb. But what are we doing to address that? I think we are not doing enough, because if we were doing enough, the absorption into the job market would be much better. So you're likely to see a young generation of people who are disenchanted with the state system, and they're likely to rebel against their own
So
state.
should we be thinking from a risk perspective, anticipating a rise in civil obedience? Like you've mentioned, there's been some protests against government in Sri Lanka recently because many countries in the world are facing similar crises. Should we in South Africa expect a rise in civil obedience or not, from a risk analysis perspective?
The combination of large unemployment of young people, lack of education and lack of absorption in informal and formal sector, it's a recipe for disobedience. Remember, the youth, they're always driving change. So they are likely to become impatient with the system. Whatever politicians are saying that we are doing our best to address this, as long as that doesn't trickle down to ordinary people, you are likely to see a lot of people who go to the street. I mean, I just learned that people are starting to plan protests against the fuel increases. And people are going to be hit hard, our rural communities with respect to the increase in paraffin and so on, the mode of transportation, access to basic. So those issues actually are a recipe for disobedience, and it will be out of control because the compact system between ordinary people and the state is starting to face serious pressure. So we're likely to see that.
I don't want to sound alarmist or creating unnecessary panic, but I'm just thinking about it. Are we headed into a winter of discontent of sorts in South Africa? Against the background you've just explained now, but like in a city like Johannesburg, every year in July, the metro increases its tariffs.
Yeah.
Rates go up. Electricity is about as well to go up. Salaries are pretty much stagnant. Inflation is shooting up.
But then we are not being an alarmist. I think we need to openly discuss the challenges that our state is facing. How do we manage those issues? The more we get people who are not being absorbed, particularly young people, I mean, we're the highest in terms of the unemployment of young people. We are likely to see civil disobedience. We are likely to see young people who are disenchanted with the state system, no longer trusting the state system. It will translate even to participating in the democratic system. They will not participate in any election because they don't see the benefit of participating in the electoral system.
Could one of the ways that the state could use is to strategize about how do you absorb unskilled labor? Because there must be a way where you could have infrastructure projects where you need manual labor. For example, it shouldn't be the focus be there rather than look at these digital type of jobs where you don't have enough skills and you don't have enough qualified people coming through the system, but you've got a huge base of unskilled labor just sitting there waiting to cause trouble, so to speak.
But then in the last few years, we have seen challenges. Plumbers. We don't have enough, we don't have a lot of people who are doing welding. We actually import labor in terms of welding. But the problem is that we haven't absorbed these people in these artisans to train them, to prepare them. And of course, the perception that getting a university degree is the most ultimate thing that people are aiming for. The changes that are happening around the world, we need to adapt. We're not adapting. The state it needs to empower these young people in terms of these basic skills so that they get absorbed into the labor market. If we don't, we're going to lose them. And losing them is not an option that we all really contemplate.
And we can't afford that. Besides the pressure of rising food prices, fuel prices, but the factors that we've touched on, including the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, the question of economy, growing the economy to create jobs is still an issue. IMF pointing out that pretty much most of sub-Saharan Africa is standing still post the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think should be taken into account by this government of South Africa in mitigating the risk and trying to just to get the economy moving in the right direction?
One thing that we've been saying, all of us and all South Africans are saying this, and all political parties are saying this, is to maintain and contain the level of corruptions, because the money does not filter to be capitalized to create more jobs and so on. Look at the train system, how it collapsed.
The railways.
The railway system. I mean, I used to use, when I was growing up, we used to take trains from Soweto to Joburg. It was the cheapest mode of transportation for poor people. It's no longer there. And if you look at the root of that, this endemic corruption that we're not dealing with it as a country. If we deal with those kind of wastages and we close the leakages that we are seeing, we're likely to really recapitalize this money and create more jobs for more people. And people are becoming very impatient for all of us. And the level of the disparity between the rich and poor in this country is quite shocking. It's not sustainable. It's a recipe for civil unrest. And I think as a student of conflict resolution, we're starting to see symptoms of this conflict building up and rebellions starting to emerge. And we need to talk about it and discuss it, how to manage those challenges.
As you talk about it and you discuss how to manage it in your mind from a risk analysis thing, what could be the main mitigating factors in the short to medium term? Because the problems are not going anywhere anytime soon. You need to start to be seen to be doing something. What could those mitigating factors be to consider, Dr. Makhubela?
Mitigating factors, listen, the food production, including people to include small-scale farmers. I mean, I went to Nampo, as I said, small-scale farmers are not there. So those kind of subsistence farming, it needs to be encouraged and funded so that we at least deal with the question of the shortages of food. We don't have it now. We have challenge of access to buying food, but we are likely to face shortages now that the next harvest season it's approaching. And the access to fertilizers and so on is going to be a huge challenge. So
food security is one of those things you need to address. Thank you very much for your time and for your insights as usual. Much appreciated.
Always a pleasure.
That's Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, Director at Risk Recon. I mean, as we've been focusing here at eNCA about the cost of living since yesterday, we're looking as well at the risk that are linked to that. What could be the ramifications be if this situation just continues as is?